Okay, we're going to start with the ulna. The ulna is the most medial bone of the forearm. And if you're looking at your arm, it's on the pinky side. And it connects with the distal end of the humerus. Some of those features include the olecranon or the olecranon process, right here. And that is the very most proximal side of the U-shape projection, which you can see easily. Then we have the coronoid process, which is on the other side of the olecranon process. And that's the projection on the other side of the U. Then we have the trochlear notch, which is the indentation that actually rides the trochlea of the humerus, and that's that middle area. Then we have the radial notch, and this receives the side of the radial head. And this is on the lateral edge and corresponds to where the radial head will articulate. It's right here. Next, we have the ulnar head, which you can see in two locations here. This is the entire smooth surface at the distal end of the ulna. And lastly, we have the styloid process, and that's the distalmost projection of the bone. It points at the pinky from left to right, and you'll notice that it looks a little bit like a stiletto type heel. So it's this little spot at the very, very bottom. And again, that's the distalmost projection of the bone. Now moving on to the radius. So we will start with the radial head. And that's the entire proximal head. It's smooth on the outside surface and concave at the top. And it's going to pivot around the capitulum of the humerus. Here's our radial head. Right there as well. Next, we have the radial tuberosity. And that's the large irregular shaped bump that's just distal to the radial head. So here we have our radial head, and here we have our bump. And that's your radial tuberosity. Then we have our ulnar notch, which I apologize, I put radial, but it's actually ulnar. And that receives the side of the ulnar head. And this is facing medial, opposite of the styloid process. And it's the point where the radius articulates medially, so right here. And then lastly, we have the styloid process right here. Which is actually the distalmost point of the bone. And just to remember, on the radius, the smooth concave surface of the distal end of the radius should face anterior, and the styloid process should point towards the thumb.